Alert! Canadian and Alberta politics in crisis. Major shocking developments revealed. Alberta is facing a political and social storm that is reshaping public discourse across the province, with controversies spanning governance, education, and societal values. Parents, educators, and voters are closely monitoring developments that impact daily life, from what children are taught in schools to the broader direction of provincial leadership. Former Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi has re-emerged as a significant political figure, running for provincial leadership against Danielle Smith. While many remember his calm and effective crisis management during his mayoral tenure, critics highlight his continued focus on personal prestige and privileges, questioning whether a government led by Nenshi would prioritize public interest or maintain the practical policies needed to address Alberta's pressing challenges. Premier Danielle Smith has navigated this tense political landscape by emphasizing child welfare and educational integrity. A flashpoint has been the Edmonton Public School Board's circulation of material deemed inappropriate for younger students. Smith has maintained that age-inappropriate content, including sexualized or highly ideological material, should be carefully restricted and made available only to older students who can process it responsibly. While critics frame this approach as censorship, Smith presents it as a necessary measure to protect children and ensure that school libraries and classrooms provide safe, age-appropriate resources that foster healthy development and learning. The book bans and content restrictions have affected widely recognized literary works, including classics and culturally significant texts. Titles such as Brave New World and works by Maya Angelou have been restricted or removed in certain districts, sparking intense public debate. Smith emphasizes that the policy is not intended to suppress diversity, but to ensure that students are not exposed to content they are not developmentally ready to handle. Critics argue that these measures risk marginalizing important voices and limiting students' exposure to different perspectives, while supporters view them as essential safeguards against premature exposure to adult content and ideological material. Teachers and unions have voiced significant opposition to Smith's directives. The Alberta Teachers Association has raised concerns about increased workloads, bureaucratic compliance, and political interference in professional decision-making. Many educators feel caught between adhering to government mandates and exercising their professional judgment, creating stress and frustration in the classroom. While Smith stresses that her intent is to provide uniform guidance on age-appropriate content, the tension between provincial authority and teacher autonomy has created a challenging environment in schools, with educators striving to balance compliance with ethical responsibilities and students' best interests. Ideological influence in classrooms has become another focal point of debate. Some parents and advocacy groups argue that certain teachers introduce social theories, gender concepts, or politically charged material to children too early. Even isolated cases of such exposure have heightened parental concern, prompting calls for transparency and accountability. Smith's policies establish structured guidelines delineating what is appropriate for elementary, junior high, and senior high students, while ensuring access to culturally and historically significant literature. These measures aim to protect children without diminishing their exposure to diverse viewpoints or critical thinking opportunities. Nenshi's stance on education contrasts sharply with Smith's approach. He advocates full access to all educational materials, framing restrictions as government overreach. Supporters praise his position as progressive and protective of academic freedom, while critics fear it exposes children to material beyond their developmental readiness and shifts focus away from core educational priorities. This ideological clash reflects a broader political divide in Alberta, where decisions about school content have become proxies for larger battles between progressive and conservative values, placing families in the middle of complex societal debates. Parental engagement in Alberta politics has intensified, particularly through socially conservative advocacy groups focused on children's safety and transparency in education. While these groups frame their involvement as protecting children, opponents argue that their activism advances a broader ideological agenda that risks politicizing education and distorting classroom priorities. The resulting tension has turned school boards into arenas for political confrontation, where decisions about educational content extend far beyond classrooms and influence provincial election strategies and public perceptions of leadership. Implementation varies across Alberta. In Spruce Grove, schools maintain traditional practices, teaching French and upholding national symbols, while keeping inappropriate material from younger students. Administrative demands, like cataloging thousands of books, have strained educators. Some teachers restrict access or cover books entirely, inadvertently misrepresenting policy intent and causing confusion among students and parents. Political stakes extend to broader governance issues. Nenshi and allied unions have sought to portray Smith as authoritarian, framing her child protection measures as overly restrictive. Smith supporters argue the opposition exploits children for political gain. Education has become a central battleground, influencing public opinion and electoral outcomes. Beyond politics, the social and economic implications are significant. Education underpins workforce development, civic engagement, and social cohesion. Uncertainty in schools risks undermining public confidence, affecting communities and Alberta's long-term stability. Policymakers, parents, and educators must navigate these challenges carefully, knowing each decision impacts children and the province's future. As Alberta approaches provincial elections, citizens face critical choices. Smith emphasizes structured guidelines, child protection, and age-appropriate access, while Nenshi champions inclusivity and freedom of access. Voter decisions will shape governance, social stability, and trust in public institutions, with long-term implications for education and policy. Ultimately, Alberta stands at a crossroads, where decisions on education, leadership, and societal values will have lasting effects. Parents, educators, and citizens must remain engaged to ensure safe, enriching, and age-appropriate learning. Debates over book bans, ideological influence, and union authority reflect broader societal choices about governance and inclusivity. The paths chosen today will determine the well-being of Alberta's children, the cohesion of communities, and the integrity of democratic institutions for generations.